and didn't win any of them. But if you've ever seen the movie Amelie, I would highly recommend it. It's a perfect example of postmodern dilemma. And it's fun. But so if I were to ask you, say you were driving along and it's dark and you're in a traffic jam. For those of you who've never left Alaska, let me explain. A traffic jam is when you're on like 3 or 4 lanes of traffic with cars filling every lane for hundreds of yards, maybe even more than that, right? And for some reason, everybody's stuck. Occasionally we have something like this on the Glen Highway when somebody decides to park sideways, in the middle of 3 lanes. I never understood why people will do that, but it usually stops everybody for an hour or so. But there are places in the lower 48 where routinely people will sit in traffic waiting without knowing what's going on. So in this particular environment, you're in the traffic, it's dark.
Seward.
Really? Seward? They only have 1 lane.
No, it happens on the Seward Highway.
Oh, on the Seward Highway, yes. Where they don't have any lane.
One time I was stuck in Seward, and it took, I don't even know, I think it was like 2 hours, because we were only going like 30, anywhere from like 20 to 35 miles an hour the whole way back from Seward.
I usually think of that as a 2.5-hour ride.
No, not Seward, I'm talking about Girdwood. My bad.
Oh, Girdwood. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, so that's
It's still pretty far to be going very slow. So.
one of the neat problems mathematically is we say it's what, 65 miles? There.
I don't know.
That's if you follow the guy with the little stick that has a wheel and he goes or sometimes they drive a truck and they have a wheel to measure it. But if you went like this to measure it perfectly along the coast, what you would find is that it's a lot farther. Right? Or if you fly like a crow, it's going to be a lot shorter, right? In other words, there's lots of ways of different measurement, to find out how far. But that's a whole other thing. That was a squirrel, sorry. But so here you are in traffic, and sitting in the car right next to you is a beautiful young lady. And there's a car full of ugly guys behind her. And for some reason, they are all really pissed off at that lady. And so since you're just sitting there, the guys get out of the car and they come up to her car. Fortunately, she's got it locked, but they're all banging on the doors and trying to get her out. And they look so angry, they're clearly going to try to hurt her.
Are we talking about ice?
Thanks for the updated reference. Because it could be, but no, I have a particular incident in mind that happened in Detroit. But so the question Kant asks you, actually not, it's me, but Kant might ask you, what's your obligation? To get out of the car and help the girl, the lady, or to just sit in your car and ignore what's going on?
Well, how pretty is she?
Oh my gosh.
She's pretty.
Okay.
She's so pretty.
Depends on your
No
morals, I
matter
guess.
what.
Do it.
Depends on your morals at the end of the day. Are you gonna get out and help?
I think it's an R&R situation, cost benefit analysis.
So show of hands, how many of you are going to get out of the car to help? No
I
kidding.
don't know.
Do I got something to defend myself with? Are we just standing out there?
You guys don't
Because
say
I'm not a
strapped.
big guy.
Car full of
We're in
dudes.
Alaska. Stay strapped.
Sorry, man, I'm not a big guy.
Yeah, my first thought when I was first faced with this was I'll get out of the car and then pee my pants. It was like, what the hell am I going to do?
Oh, that just reminded me.
I had one lady in class once that said, I'd get out, get my shotgun out of the back trunk, and you know, and et cetera. Right? You know, so yeah, some Alaskans have weapons, and so that would change the whole scenario, right? But a lot of people aren't going to get out of the car for exactly the reason you suggest. I'm not. You know, they're all bigger than me. You know, there's like 3 or 4 of them.
I'm 5'10" at best.
Right.
Skinny guy. Not
So what actually happened in the news in Detroit, this one particular occasion, was nobody got out of their cars to help, even though there were lots of people there. You probably studied this kind of a case in psychology, if you've had the psychology courses. And you know, you have to explain, why do we all just sit there when we morally know we ought to help, but we don't?
Bystander effect?
I think so. I think, yeah. Yeah, so we're just going to watch. And actually what happened was she hopped out of the car eventually and ran for it, and they chased her, and actually I think they beat her a little bit. A little bit? I don't know how that works. But she ended up jumping off of a bridge that was right there into the river and drowned. So it became quite a national story and a big concern. And everybody wanted to know, why didn't anybody help her?
That's why.
Because we've like constructed a society that believes that it's somebody else's problem. And not our own.
I don't know if it's that.
Instead
I think that
obey, you can't break the rules, as in you're scared that you're gonna get punitive action put against you if you
In Anchorage,
meet violence with violence.
while I was already living here, a Saturday afternoon on the pavement next to Penny's, Penny's is still there, right? But you know where Penny's is, right? So there was a man laying on the pavement, and another man with a kitchen knife, a big kind, stabbing him. And a couple hundred people were standing around and looking, and no one did anything except this one man came up, stopped his car, got out his shotgun, and told the guy to stop. The guy wouldn't stop, so he shot him. The shotgun, close range, didn't stop, kept stabbing him. Shot him a second time, still didn't stop. This is cocaine, right? Or whatever, right?
It's a
No?
little more than that.
It took 3 times. He shot him 3 times before that finally stopped him. The police came and arrested the man with a shotgun. You can't shoot a shotgun in Anchorage. By the way, everybody was furious, and as a result, and the other guy died. He was stabbed to death. It turned out they were roommates having an argument.
When was this?
Oh gosh, 80s maybe.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, yeah.
So what does Kant say?
Kant says you know what you have to do. So if you feel guilty that you didn't get out of the car to help, that was your moral imperative. Your categorical imperative was to help. But what Kant points out in this book is that most often we end up thinking about consequences. What's going to happen to me if I get out? What's going to happen if I shoot, the guy with the shotgun? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? Consequentialists, when we think about consequences, why do I not have an eraser closer?
Consequences. Isn't that a play on Kant's name?
So now's a good time, I think, to put up, I might have already put it up once, but, so imagine a map. I call it a cognitive map. Does that make sense? Because it's going to help me map abstractions, abstract concepts. I always put the I here, the we over here, I have certitude or certainty up top, and I have uncertainty at the bottom. You can make your own cognitive map however you like, to organize your thinking, right? This is just mine, right? And I think of us being born here, we come into life, and I'm focused on the self without having a self-concept, but I have needs, and I cry when I'm unhappy, and hopefully mom takes care of my needs, and so I come into a world where there's certainty, hopefully, a good family, right? And so mom kind of helps me out. So our typical path seems to be to come along, right? I put Kant up here. He argues for moral certainty. You have moral certainty. And by the way, that's referred to as deontological deontology. So if I say what
What is that the study of?
pardon?
What is that the study of? Deontology.
The study of duty.
Study of duty.
Day reminds me of Deus or Dios, which is God.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So like divine duty. Anyways, sorry.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it came. It's clearly Deus, and the study of, but it's not the study of God. It's the study of the duty that we have.
That's divine.
And so when we think of deontology, we don't think of just Kant. Kant's the philosopher that I put there, but you can, and not just me, by the way. I'm not making this up totally on my own. But you also have, the kind of religious morals are also associated with deontology. So, never lie, which, by the way, is one of Kant's moral imperatives. You should never lie. Another example that we have that's difficult is, they come to the house, the Nazis come to the house, and you're hiding Jews up in the attic, and they say, "Do you have any Jews in here?" What do you do, right? The families, of course, that tried to protect them lied. Jews? We hate them. We wouldn't have them in our house. No. Oh, okay. And they leave. Maybe they'll come in a few times later and they check and they discover, you have Anne Frank and her family in the house. Bad citizens. Now everybody's going to get shot or something, right? You know how that works, right? So there's the question of lying. And for Kant, you can't ever lie. Nor can you do the morally improper thing. So in that case, you have to get out and do, regardless of the consequences. Well, the consequences are an issue for people that know where they left their magic marker. Here it is. And those are the people down here. I put John Stuart Mill. John Stuart Mill down here. And utilitarianism. I'm old enough that I start spelling the word and I get to a certain point and I forget what word I'm spelling or something. So utilitarianism. John Stuart Mill. They're morally uncertain. We haven't done John Stuart Mill yet, but John Stuart Mill will be a contemporary of Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin gives us theory of evolution, biological, right? But the theory of change is already going to be in there from Hegel on. And so you've got morality evolving. Morality evolves. Progress. There's moral progress. Thomas Jefferson might have kept slaves, might have thought he couldn't free them, because then they would have to cope on their own in that world that would not respect them. So he's going to protect them by keeping them as slaves in his family, where he knew that they would be protected. That's my interpretation of why he did that, right? Today, instead of having slaves, we pay minimum wage so that you can't afford to live. At least if you were a slave, you still had a place to live, and food, and retirement even. Theoretically. It depended, of course, on the plantation owner, the slave owner, right? Sorry, but there's that point of view as well. But now what we have is wage slaves who can't even afford to house themselves. So they got a job, but they have to live in a tent along the Glen Highway somewhere. Right? Was that a morally good thing to do? Well, I mean, a lot of people think that the whole reason that happened was because people realized it was actually economically cheaper to not own people. Just make them work for less than they needed in order to survive. So that, well, maybe the government will come in and support them in other ways, right?
Yeah, they can still own their property and get all their needs met without the added burden of having to caretake. So it became,
I mean, this is an infuriating alternative view of what all of that did in our country. But what am I thinking about? Morality progresses. We get better. We now have a concern